Hi everyone, this is Aaron and I'm here today with Pastor Matt Powell. Pastor Matt, we received an anonymous question via Tumblr and this person wants to know, what is the line between free will and God's plan for us? Even though God knows what we are going to do we still technically have free will?
Yeah, when it comes to the issue of God's will and our responsibility, the Bible never makes a dichotomy between the two. What I mean by that is that the Bible never attempts to separate the two. The Bible always upholds both. It doesn't explain how it both works, but we know that the Bible talks about both. And we see this just in the life of Paul himself. For example, if you go to 2 Corinthians chapter 1, he makes it very clear that the circumstances that he was in was part of God's will. And ultimately, the purpose of that was so that he could comfort those in their affliction as well. But at the same time, we also read how Paul oftentimes tells his readers to exercise responsibility. And so how do the two work together? We don't know. And that's part of who God is. That there are certain things about God that we cannot explain, but he's able to understand and is able to make sense in his own mind, which is why God is so much more above us. If you want to read a good book on this subject that has to do more so with evangelism, but nonetheless still has implications, it's called Evangelism and the Sovereignty of God by J.I. Packer. And so it's a good book with good principles that address human responsibility and God's will for us. But to answer the question really quickly, there are really two ways theologians have thought of God's will. One is his decretive will, which means this is what he's laid out for us in Scripture. This is what he expects of us. So he expects us to believe in the gospel. He expects us to do good for the sake of Christ. He expects us to do these things. This is God's decretive will. It's laid out for us. This is what we have to do. The other one is called God's hidden will, if you would. These are the things which God places us in life that isn't explicitly told for us in Scripture. For example, why am I a pastor? Well, this is part of God's secret will for me. Or why are you a student? This is God's secret will. It's not laid out for you in Scripture, but it just happens to be there by God's sovereignty and through life itself. How do we live in light of that? Well, the simple answer is that we live in light of his decretive will. We do what is revealed to us through his will as revealed by Scripture, but we also trust and know that he will eventually reveal for us things about our future in due time. If I could put it in a shorter way, it's be faithful to the things that God has revealed to us, and God will be faithful in revealing certain things about our future to us as well. Live every day being faithful to God, but you trust that God has a plan for you, if I could put it in those terms, that he is sovereign over the affairs of your life. And so remember that even though God is sovereign, even though we do have will to a certain extent, that does not mean that we are just to sit back and do nothing, let God take over, but we are to exercise our faith towards God, knowing that he is sovereign over all things.
Thanks, Pastor Matt, for taking the time to do Unicoi Questions. Next week, we will get together and talk about free will and salvation, so stay tuned for that. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Unicoi Questions. The great thing about Tumblr is that you can ask your questions anonymously, so feel free to ask us all of your questions or check out our archive at unicoiquestions.tumblr.com. Thanks. See you soon.